Yeah. So
Peggy,
I I used to know.
the last thing you were telling me was because we were talking about 40 years ago, and you were
Oh, yeah.
telling me that there was really always a small percentage of people who were anti um, women in aviation. And I was kind of shooting for the way back machine, like, you know, at that time we were talking about, I don't know,
Well,
uniforms or whatever. And now we're talking about, I don't know.
okay. Well, I had time to think about it while we were working on the on the
Perfect.
technology.
It was supposed to happen.
Yes.
And to be.
Well, one of the things I think we have to keep in mind, and you said, looking back 40 years, 40 years ago, it's kind of this, if you don't have very many people in an industry, how do you build that cycle? Well, I think some of the things that happened, if you look back in the 1980s, there were very few women, let's say airline pilots, using that as an example. It was around, well, less than 1%. And now that number is up to over 4%. Well, that doesn't maybe sound like a lot percentage-wise, but if you're talking raw numbers, you're talking, instead of, and I probably should have put some numbers down before I throw something out, but instead of talking, 200 women airline pilots, and now you're talking 1,000 plus, whatever the number is, it has increased. One of the things I wanted to mention too, and I just had made a note, let's take, for example, the FAA administrator position. Until, it was, I think, 1993, we had our first woman, FAA deputy administrator, Linda Daschle, and she came and spoke to the conference. We even worked out a memorandum of understanding between the FAA and women in aviation. Well, a few years later, we brought back, and just naming a few of these people, Jane Garvey was the first female FAA administrator, and later, Marion Blakey. So I think women who
Wow.
are, in aviation, well, the industry overall, you're seeing women move into these positions, and some of that just takes time, uh, to get to those positions, to have the experience, to have the expertise, to be, used for that. Women, staying with airline for a minute, president, Colleen Barrett was president of Southwest Airlines for about 7 or 8 years. We've got, Linda Daschle, president of Cape Air Airlines. So yeah, the numbers may still be small, but they're there. The visibility is helping. You get a passenger going on the airlines, they see women in the cockpit more frequently than they did 40 years ago. Some of that's just, awareness and time. That would be
Okay.
my quick answer.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah,
makes sense. I've
that's
seen a shift myself. I mean, I'm with United Airlines, and I'm seeing more women. I'm not a pilot per se or in the operations anymore. I used to be, but I'm in network operations, and I'm seeing more schedulers that are women. I'm seeing more dispatchers that are women. I'm seeing more people that are like me that are in these positions that I'm feeling more comfortable is what I'm trying to say. And I'm feeling that it's more common to see more women in these roles. And it's like I've seen a shift, but I mean, I'm newer into the game. So I'm not more tenured.
I think back to that time period and like when I graduated from high school, and to the point that you said that women weren't really involved as pilots. When I thought about the aviation, a career in aviation out of high school, I really never even saw myself as being a pilot as possible. The only real job I ever thought of was as a flight attendant.
Sure, sure.
And there's
Well,
nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. I agree. Well, another interesting thing, if looking at it, as time went on, the conferences, I would sometimes have individuals come up to me and say, "Why are you letting men speak at the conference?"
Mhm.
Or "Why are you letting men join the organization?" Why not? So, in terms of allowing them to speak, I said, "These are leaders in the industry we're bringing in. We have uh, president associations and some of the other things that I mentioned, and they're coming in and sharing with all of us what they see as important as happening in the industry. And I think it's wonderful that they're coming
Yeah.
and that they are
Yeah.
accepting our invitations to come and speak. Well, why would we not want them to come? And what actually happened, I'll share one of my little secrets, if you will, over the time. We would invite these people to come, presidents of a Cessna Aircraft Company or the General Aviation Manufacturers Association. Ed Stimson was president of GAMA, the General Aviation Manufacturers Association, for many years. And the organizations, the companies that belong to GAMA were like Cessna, Beechcraft, Learjet, the general aviation manufacturers. And we tried to get him for a few different years, and he was always polite and everything. He says, "Well, thank you," but he came. And it was at the time the product liability legislation was going through Congress. And the product liability bill was very important because what it was going to do to help the manufacturers, if an accident happened in let's say a J3 Cub that was built 50 years ago and somebody was injured or killed in the accident, the attorneys would go after the manufacturers who built that airplane 50 years ago. And they said, this is crazy. So we need to put a limit on how far back we can go. It was 19 years. So Ed Stimson came, he's talking about all this. And in his speech, he says, now, what we want everybody to do is, write your congressman, send letters, fax. He was swarmed. At the end of his talk in the general session, many people came up and said, "Now, how exactly do I do that? What's a good? What should I need to put in the letter? How do I find out how to send this?" And he said that over the next couple of weeks, that there were many letters and phone calls that were made by people who were at the Women Aviation Conference, and he was sold. So he would, in some of his meetings, he would encourage these CEOs of these manufacturers that they should come and participate at our event to speak or exhibit or whatever. And it worked. I mean, I could give you other, get one airline president to come, and others want to know why we didn't invite their company. They want to be there too. And that's what helped a lot with the exhibit space by getting a company to come representing a portion of the industry or segment. That encouraged others to say, "Well, we want to be a part of this."
And then they would see how serious you were because, back in the day, men are probably thinking this is just like a sewing circle sort of
Yes,
thing. And then they come and they see, oh, this is serious business. And these women, and truth be told, women are doers. So if you tell them to call or write to a representative, we're like, I
On it.
get the assignment. We're on
yes,
it.
right, yes,
Way to do it.
So yeah. And I think it was great because I can see that they would come in and be like, they're talking about legitimate issues here.
yes, yep. It was funny. The first few years, we had about 10% of the attendees early on were men. So kind of the opposite of what you go to a other aviation convention, be 90% men, 10% women. For us, it was the opposite. And as the conference grew and the percentage of women grew, excuse me, the percentage of men grew over time. Some of the guys who were coming earlier said, "Well, what's spreading the word? We like being one of the few guys that come to the Women in Aviation conference."
I did not know that. So it's not exclusive just to women. Men are also welcome.
Welcome, yes. And when the organization was formed in 1995, we're always open, and I'll give you a little background on that too. All right. So, in starting Women in Aviation, there were a lot of other organizations out there that were for women in aviation, but in a narrow area. For example, the 99s, been around since 1929. I'm a member, been a member since got my private pilot certificate back in the Whirly Girls for women helicopter pilots. I'm a member of that group too. Anyway, there's all these different groups, but kind of more of a narrow focus. And when Women in Aviation was formed, we said we wanted to be for women and men if they were happy to join us. But in any part of aviation, whether they're a flight attendant, a pilot, a mechanic, air traffic controller, we wanted them to feel a part of our organization. Things now, again, I'm a 99, but 99 for a long time, still am a member. But we said, men don't always feel as welcome. They can be like a 49 and a halfer is the designations, um, but not a full-fledged voting member. And I said, well, I want this to be open. If a man wants to participate and support our mission and be a part of this, they're welcome. And that was kind of our philosophy early on.
I think that's great.
Me too. I like to sprinkle, I mean, even in my podcast, like a few men in here and there, because I think there's some value and some leadership and mentorship that we can take away from our peers in general. I mean, it's just not a gender thing. It's just there's something that we can take from each other to learn and grow as aviators, as human
Hmm.
beings.
Yes.
And that was
Yep.
actually one of my questions. Like, what do you think we can get from the opposite sex? But you just answered it. How important are allies in supporting and shaping, the progress for women in aviation? But you answered that very beautifully. I do want to talk a little bit about the scholarship. How does it feel knowing that you've helped shape millions, if not probably millions of lives, pursue careers in aviation? For you, how does that impact feel?
It's probably one of the most satisfying parts of women in aviation to have seen the scholarship program grow. Like you said, the people that were impacted. We had scholarship winners who years later, once they were into their career, started scholarships to help others. I mean, I have multiple stories about that. How it started, I want to tell kind of funny story, how it started when we were going to start the organization. We announced it at the March 1995 conference, and we had a little tabletop exhibit for this new organization called Women in Aviation, because the conference was still being put on that last year by Parks College. So later. new organization, and we're going to have scholarships. So we had a raffle, $1 a chance, $5 for 6 chances. And at the end, part of the money was given to the winner of the raffle. But we had raised a little over $1,000 to kick off this scholarship program, and we gave out two $500 scholarships. Well, we were excited. That was a start. We had our scholarship program. The next year, the conference was going to be in Minneapolis, and Northwest Airlines had already said they would like to be a host. Maybe we'd do some tours of their facilities. They'd maybe sponsor one of the meals or something like that. And they said, we're very interested that you started this scholarship program, so we would like to be a part of that. We want to help with the scholarships for next year. And I was thinking to myself, great, maybe they'll give us another $1,000 or $5,000, really big. And they said, well, I was saying, for the values, well, we weren't really thinking about cash. And I thought, what does he mean? And he said, well, we want to give away a type rating.
Oh,
So a type rating in one of the
Wow.
super airplane, any airplane that we fly. And that's that was my reaction. Wow.
that's
So
big.
they had to have certain qualifications. You couldn't be off the street, no flight time. So you had to have, certainly instrument rating. So commercial, I think you had to have a commercial license, commercial instrument. And to apply, we had, I don't know, 20, 25 people, I think, apply for that one. They selected the winner. They didn't tell any of us who the winner was. So Northwest Airlines sponsored the lunch that year. One of the vice presidents came out, and at the end of the lunch, he was up on the stage to announce the scholarship winner. I'll always remember this as long as I live, and we've got a little clip of it on video, but he says the young lady's name. She was at a table in the back of the room. She jumped up. She screamed. She put her hand on her head like this, and she goes running up to this podium, jumps up on the stage, and he says, well, young lady, you've won the scholarship. What airplane do you want to fly? She came right back, no hesitation, Boeing 747, the biggest airplane in the fleet that they have.
My gosh.
She got this, and the value of that scholarship back then was probably around 25,000. Today, it's more like 35,000 plus. So then
Wow.
other companies
Smart.
came up afterward and said, well, we'd like to be a part of the scholarship program, because it was obviously is a big part of the conference. We put it in our press releases afterward. I mean, we help promote it. So the other companies, well, they want to do that too. And the scholarships,
I
not
love
just
that.
airline,
I
because a lot
love
of
that.
people talk, airlines, and there's so many other careers as you guys know, but we have had, and I'm gonna grab a note here for a minute so I don't miss something here. The scholarships, there's some of them for pilots, so even just getting your private pilot certificate, instrument rating, aerobatic flight training, type ratings, helicopter flight instructor. John and Martha King is named after
Thanks.
Martha, yeah,
Yeah.
CFI of the year, CFI add-on rating. So maybe you're already CFI, but you want to be a CF double I or CF multi-engine. That's what their scholarship is for. We also had Sporties donated a scholarship for a mechanic, an aviation mechanic, to get their private pilot certificate, because they always felt that a mechanic would better appreciate the work that they're doing if they also had some pilot experience. I mean, people would create these things. Somebody called me up and one day and they said, you got some great scholarships, but a lot of them are going to young people, college, university age. And what about somebody who wants to learn to fly later in life after they've had a family and now they've always wanted to fly, but never had the time or the money? So there was a lady who created a scholarship for a woman who's 40 or older to get her private pilot certificate. I mean, just
What?
all different scholarships. Somebody wanted to be in a space program,
There's scholarships for everything.
everything. Yeah.
Wow.
Excuse me.
Often joke with Natalia because she has me on here and I'm a very different kind of aviation involved person. Fascinated with flying, but I get airsick. And I'm not joking. But I always wondered, if I flew, would it be like when I drive? I don't get airsick, or I don't get car sick if I'm driving. And I thought maybe I should just get my pilot's license and then I could fly places and I would never get airsick.
There you
So
go.
this is enlightening to me.
There is a lot of truth in that. People sometimes, like you said, airsick, or also maybe people who are a little worried about flying. If you put them in an airplane and they're just sitting there, it's a little unnerving because you don't have control. I guess that's part of it.
Right.
So if you take somebody up for a flight and let them actually hold the controls, doesn't have to necessarily be a full-fledged lesson, but just let them handle the controls. See what happens when you turn the wheel or go up or go down. It makes a big, big
It
difference. So
does.
I want you to start taking at least one flight lesson here.
Okay.
Yes.
I will.
Okay.
Do it. Do it.
Because we
That
have a
was me.
place just out here.
Oh, great.
So I know some of the people out there, Natalia. Maybe we can include that in the podcast for the air show.
We should.
Teresa takes a flight lesson.
I
There
would
you
love to
go.
film that. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
me. That was me. I was deathly afraid, and my husband's an air show pilot. I think I told you. And we got a Luscombe and he's been taking me up, slowly teaching me and I'm okay. I took the controls. I was air sick. I was deathly afraid. And me taking the controls on a smooth, clear day without thermals before
Yes.
noon.
Yeah.
Okay. So because of 8 to 11 a.m., I'm fine. But when the thermals hit, I'm like, take the controls, I'm fine. So Teresa, when there's thermals, it's not a good
No, there's this thing on a
I'm
commercial
like,
airline right as you're coming in to land, and you'll usually get that thermal drop. When I feel that, I'm like, where's my bag?
yeah.
Because I know that my son is the same way. And I read the science that says it's the disconnect between what your brain expects
Yeah.
and what your eye perceives.
Yeah. When you're in control, it's a whole different story. And I think, I mean, everyone should take a discovery flight, and there's a lot of opportunities and scholarships. And, once I started to learn the concepts of flight, I think anyone can do it. I mean, you're never too young, you're never too old.
And that over 40 scholarship, that over 40 scholarship is inspired. What a great idea.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
amazing. I didn't know that existed.
We
I
need to
don't know
go
if
to
it
this
still does, but it
conference.
was for many years.
We should go to that conference and see what's what.
You should. It'll be in
Right.
Dallas next week.
Yeah, that's what I heard. So that was another question I had for those that haven't been to a conference, like first timers, like what are some tips? Like I've never been, Teresa's never been. Like what do we expect? Like what are some first timer tips that we should anticipate or do?
Or share.
Go to everything that you can go to. So it starts usually with a reception on the opening night, and it's a good chance just to kind of start, maybe meeting some people and getting acquainted with some of the staff and there's usually one speaker maybe for the reception. But then the general sessions in the mornings usually are the top speakers for that year's event. And the exhibit hall. The exhibit hall is open multiple hours over the 2 full days of the conference. So definitely, spend some time in there. The companies that are there the twofold reasons that they're there. Sometimes they're there to recruit. They're hiring people. They're looking to hire. So if you're looking for a job, you bring your resume or at least have a conversation. But others are there just like any other aviation trade show. They're there selling their products and services. So it's a great place to hang out. Um, just occasionally there are tours at the conference, and depending on the location of the conference and what's available in the area, and I'm not sure what's planned for next year. They haven't announced anything yet on the tour part, but just go, and when you're sitting down at a meal function or in a session, you have a breakout session, there's topics, all variety of topics. Just start a conversation with somebody you're sitting next to. It's amazing the people you'll meet, and you'll share your experiences and theirs, and you may have end up with some lifelong friends as a result of that
I like that.
conversation. Yeah.
And you have to be a member to go, obviously.
No, you do not have to be a
Oh, you
member.
don't. Oh,
There's a different price if you're not a member.
oh, okay, okay.
Because Natalia and I both sit on the board of directors for the Southeast Council of Air Shows. And we
Mhm.
are neck deep right now in creating content and experiences for the people who attend, which is a different perspective. And I don't see us necessarily providing women focused content, even though I would say we have a 50-50 attendance. Would you say it's more men than women? Is it more equal in ours?
A little bit, maybe 30%.
Women.
Yeah, I think.
So this would be a great way, promoting this to the women, to the women that attend to be, or women who are just listening, who are interested in getting into the field. This is a great way to meet people, I
Yes.
guess. I didn't know anything about it. And I sit on the board of an air show convention. So this is like my brain is going crazy. And I hope the people who are listening to this, the women who are listening to this that have wanted to fly or whatever, see this as a great opportunity.
Oh yeah, I've known about it for quite some time. I was a member I let it lapse, which I want to join again. But I mean, what I love about the organization is that not only do you have the organization, you have news publications as well, which you can
Oh,
learn more about. You have the scholarships, you have the website. So there's a lot of information that's being put out there on a monthly basis. I think it's a monthly newsletter, right?
Well, it was, the magazine, the printed magazine was, bi-monthly for many,
Bi-monthly,
many
okay.
years. Just this year, they made a decision to change it to a quarterly publication.
Okay.
It was yeah, and then there's electronic newsletters that come out monthly. I've got
Yeah.
a quick story about the magazine, if I
Oh,
can.
sure. Yeah.
So when we start the
Absolutely.
organization, we say, "Well, we gotta, communicate with our members," and, this is hard to believe, but the internet wasn't up and available in much. It was just starting in 1994. Hey, we wanted a magazine. We
Ah,
wanted it in your hand, you know. It turned out that the lady who had been the art director for Flying Magazine for several years and had left flying to start a family, now was in a position she was kind of looking to get back into work. We grabbed her. So we had a great somebody with some wonderful experience with a top aviation publication to come to work as our art director. But looking at the expense, it's going to cost money to print all those magazines and mail them. There was a gentleman by the name of Ray Scholler. He owned a printing company up in Wisconsin, Times Printing, and he did printed all the publications for EAA, the Experimental Aircraft Association, had for many years. And I was talking to him one day at a lunch during a board meeting. I was sort of on the EA board for several years, and telling him about this new conference. And he'd heard a little bit about the conference. I said, "Well, now we're starting an organization, and we're going to have to print a magazine." So I was kind of picking his brain, things to consider from a print standpoint, what we should do. And when our lunch was ended, he said, "I'm going to donate 1 year free printing for your magazine." That
Wow.
was wonderful. Yeah.
that's amazing.
Now, starting out, we weren't, big on membership, maybe 500 members right at that first year. And by the end of the year, we were probably closer to 1,000. But still, I mean, that just was something, just starting out. That was a wonderful gift. And then chapters. One of the things the organization has had almost since the very beginning, I think year two, we started a chapter program. At first, it was mainly you'd find them on college, university
Yeah.
campuses, and that's still about 50 to 60% of the chapter program. And others just in local communities. People in aviation would form a chapter and hold events in their local area, and it gave a chance. One of the reasons we thought the chapter program would be good. It's nice to have a conference once a year, but that's a long time, and maybe you can't go every year for work or you're sick or just can't go. So to have a local chapter in your area is a great way to stay connected to the organization. So that was one of the other things that started right away.
So I love the
And then,
chapters. I met one of the chapters, not to interrupt, but I met one of the chapters in Chicago. They went to one of our fly-ins we have here every September, and they were the most enthusiastic, excited bunch of girls. And they're like, we're part of the, Chicago chapter. And oh my gosh, we want
oh
to
yeah,
become air show pilots. And I'm like, okay, settle down. Excited. They're like, you should join the chapter. And I'm like, they were like, do you know women in aviation? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to interview the woman that started the organization. So it was just so cute. Their excitement was just like radiating. It was just so it was
you mentioned excitement. That just brings back a story. I think it was year 5 or year 6 of the conference. We had the editor of Flight Training Magazine who showed up. He'd been hearing about it, and he'd sent a staff person the year before, so he came himself just to kind of check it out. And Scott Spangler was his name. He, after the conference was over, in his next issue of Flight Training Magazine, in his editor's letter, he talked about coming to the Women Aviation Conference, the experience he had, and how impressed he was with the enthusiasm of the people. And he says, this is not a competitive group. Sometimes you go to a conference and people are like, I fly a Cessna 172. Well, I fly a Learjet. Oh, well, I fly a 747. He said, it was none of that. You may have those differences, but the people wanted to help each other. How can I help you with what you're trying to do? And he said the best way he could describe the Women in Aviation Conference was it was a cross between an Amway convention and a religious revival. So Amway conventions back in that time were like very high energy, you're going to sell this product. And, so anyway,
that makes
it was
sense.
a compliment,
It's a
compliment.
great comparison.
Enthusiastic, energetic and enthusiastic. That's probably the best way.
There's my blurb.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. This is great. So I want to touch on the education and leadership roots, if we can, a little more, because before founding the WAI, you had already built a strong career in aviation education. You did Embry-Riddle, which I was with an Embry-Riddle graduate this weekend, and he said that guys who go to Embry-Riddle don't date because there's so few women. I was like, I'm just
Yeah.
going to let that go. Between Embry-Riddle, Parks College to Georgia State, you did all of those things. And we kind of covered why you went into aviation in the first place. But serving as the first woman dean of an engineering school in the U.S., what was that even like?
Well,
Did you run into things that they were like, well, you're a woman, you don't know anything?
not so much in that position.
Okay, good.
There you
What
go.
year was that?
Yeah. Trying to think how to answer this one.
What
I
decade?
will on the Embry-Riddle thing. I will add. Currently, the Embry-Riddle female population is a little over 20% now.
Oh, wow.
Okay, bigger dating pool apparently.
Yes, yeah.
I'll
He
have
was
to let
wrong.
him know.
So,
Wrong. You know who that was.
You'll have
You
to tell
don't?
me offline.
I'll tell you later because I'm not calling anybody
You have
out because I
you
don't want to cast aspersions on their dating
you'll
history.
have to tell me offline.
But no, so okay. I was just curious about the dean of engineering because that's a really big
Yeah, it's a prestigious
title.
title.
well, so I went from Georgia State, and I just was there 1 year as faculty, and then I said Embry-Riddle, Florida faculty, including some graduate teaching, and then Embry-Riddle Prescott was associate dean. Then I get to Parks College and was dean, and then eventually vice president. But Parks was a aviation and engineering school. My primary background obviously is aviation, but yes, I was representing the engineering part of, I mean, that was Parks, aviation and engineering. But I had been in education for a long time. I've been, a flight instructor, uh, involved with other organizations like University Aviation Association, where I served as president of that group. So I've always just been very active aviation education, working with teachers, elementary, secondary teachers. We would put on 2-week workshops through the universities for elementary and secondary teachers on how to use aviation in their classroom, anywhere from first grade to high school,
Wow.
integrating aviation in the curriculum. So it just was a lifetime passion. I started out in elementary, junior high. I was going to be an elementary school teacher, and then I got interested in aviation and decided to combine the two. But that leaves
Wow.
me. This is a good segue, I think. Hopefully, you don't mind. Girls in Aviation Day is a big
Yeah.
program now. Well, I'm going to give you the Paul Harvey. Now, here's the rest of the story. We had invited Rod Hightower, who was the president of EAA. He invited him to speak, and he called me about, I don't know, 3 months before the conference. He says, "I don't know if you know this or not, but I have 4 daughters, and the oldest two are interested in coming with me when I come to speak to the, they so women in aviation to the conference." He said, "Is there anything really there for them that they would enjoy it?" And I thought about it, and I said, "Yes, I think there is." And they, the exhibit hall is kind of fun. Some of the topics would be of interest, I think, to them, and just being there, I think, would be helpful. But we had weekly staff calls, and on the next staff call, I said something. Hey, Rod called this weekend. He's asking about bringing his daughters, who one of them I think was his middle school, one was high school. And I said, sure, that was fine. And Pat Lupke, who was on our staff at the time, said, "Bring your daughter to the conference. Sounds like bring your daughter to work day." And it kind of clicked. Well, why don't we call it "Bring Your Daughter to the Conference"? So we started putting things out to the membership. Bring your daughter, your niece, your granddaughter, your neighbor's kid to the conference, and we'll have a special half-a-day program set up for any young people to come on the Saturday of the conference. And we did, and it did pretty well. Well, the next year, okay, we're going to do it again. And I said, well, why don't we open up to the kids in the local area, whatever city we're in? So we would contact public schools, we contacted Girl Scout troops, and now we made it a full day program. And we were getting kids being bussed in, sometimes van loads of kids. We would have a few hundred kids coming in for this 1 day program. And we'd have sometimes speakers like a Patty Wagstaff or Julie Clark, and they, all excited about aviation. Jessica Cox, who was born without arms but learned to fly in an airplane, and she would talk, and they were just enthralled with seeing her and what she could do using her feet when she didn't have arms. So and then we had a lot of hands-on activities. So we got the exhibitors excited about it, and we asked the exhibitors if they wanted to come up with some hands-on activities to use on the Saturday Girls in Aviation Day program, and they'd have to staff their table area. And they did. They came up with things like how to read a sectional chart, how to build an airport diagram, make an actual 3D model, flying drones. We had a cage where the kids could fly drones sometimes. They came up with really creative things. The women mechanics came up with to do wiring and make a bracelet out of aircraft wire. I mean, just a lot of ideas. So out of
Wow.
that came Girls in Aviation Day, and now it has its own magazine, which is
Mhm.
published twice a year. Okay, so go ahead a few years. We're in another staff meeting. I said, the Girls in Aviation Day program is great. It's wonderful, but it's, once a year. It's in one city. And we've got all these chapters all around the world. And there's a requirement that we put into the chapter bylaws that chapter had to have at least one education activity a year. Part of that was to meet the IRS requirements for that we're an education related nonprofit organization. And some of them struggle with coming up with ideas. Others, they had things that they'd come up with. So we sent out kind of a template of here's how you can have your own Girls in Aviation Day. What's in your area? Is there a manufacturer? Is there an aviation museum? Maybe there's a flight school. Have some activity, invite the kids to come out, and that's thousands. And I think something like 15,000 kids this year all around the world, Girls in Aviation Day.
I love it.
Its own thing that took off. Yeah. So
Yeah, every
people
Yeah.
year.
ask me sometimes, "Did you ever think it would grow to what it is?" There's no way to know. I mean, it's just one step, you try this, you try that. Not everything worked, but the things that worked, we kept going with. Yeah.
I'm really amazed at how it grew organically. And I don't know. You don't have to put this in, but I'm sitting here listening, just like people try their whole lives to build something like this. And it speaks to what a great organization and idea and mission statement that it organically took off as fast as it did. Because normally you're like trying to get anybody and, to please come, please come. You didn't even have to ask. They're like, can we come? Because of that, it makes me want to go and see what it's all about because I'm interested in aviation from my thing. And it's like, I don't even know what opportunities would open up to me if I went and attended it. And I hope that people
Sure.
who just like flying are like, I wonder what's there for me.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
No, you're absolutely right. I think when I was speaking with Peggy last week, I was like, even when I started the podcast, like it was just organically like, and then people were giving me recommendations. You should talk to Peggy. You should talk to this person. I was like, oh my gosh, did I open up Pandora's box? But then it makes you realize you're onto something big that you don't really realize what you've really gotten yourself into, but it makes you really think like there's millions of people out there that need and want something. They want that sense of community. They want their stories to be told and heard, and we as women, we want that sense of like wanting and needing to be a part of something. And that goes back to just we're women just like to help each other out.
We are, I think
Yeah.
that, going back eons, we were the community builders.
Yeah.
And so genetically it's built into us. But it gives me hope if you're a person out there who has an idea and you think, I just don't know if anybody would like it. Get out there and do it, ladies, because you just never know. I mean, look at Peggy and her idea and what it's grown into now compared to where it was 1990
Yeah.
and through that kind of growth. Who knew, right? You didn't
Yeah.
know at the time, Peggy. You had no idea.
No, I think enthusiasm is another key factor. If you have an idea and you have passion about it, that passion can come through, but you've got to tell people. You've got to, be enthusiastic about it. I think that helps.
I love it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know we went a little bit over our podcast, but I do want to ask one last question.
Okay.
Um, when you talk to young women discovering aviation, what message do you hope they take away, or what piece of advice do you want to give them to encourage them to pursue a career when just in aviation or just overcome obstacles that they may over?
I would say to them that there are many opportunities today, many more than there were 35 years ago when women aviation started. There's new things, the drone, unmanned vehicles, drones. Now we're talking another supersonic aircraft being built. Oh my goodness, there's just so many different. Yeah, and kind of like I just came to mind. Kind of like we tell the teachers to tell their students or tell the teachers too that they can use aviation in the curriculum. You can use aviation in math. You can use it in social studies, geography. You can use it in all different areas. And it's the same thing. If you have a passion, maybe this is a little on the far end, but if you have a passion and you want to be an artist, you could be involved with aviation art, whether it's designing and I've wonderful airplanes designed by artists or even more traditional artwork. Or if you're interested in communications, you could start a podcast or you can
Yeah.
that's aviation related. I mean, if you're interested in accounting and bookkeeping, great. Maybe you gear your customers to that market. It's just I think just getting out and getting familiar with aviation, going to events, reading, watching podcasts, all of those things. Something will strike your fancy or maybe get you started on a road that'll lead to something you hadn't even thought about yet.
Absolutely.
I love that, especially communication. I mean,
Right.
I never thought
Well,
I would be working for an airline. Communication airlines put them together, and that's basically
Right.
my career.
Yes. Yep.
more of an entertainer. So I sing at air shows, specializing in music from the 40s, 50s, 60s.
Oh,
And I used to sing around the neighborhood. My dad got me, he's like, hey, you should go to this air show in Reading, Pennsylvania. And they lent me clothes, 40s clothes and everything. And I saw my first P-51 Mustang and I was already, I liked fast cars and I saw that thing and I'm like, I'm in. because I love the airplanes, and I had no idea until I got involved in something aviation related that this was something I liked.
Yeah.
So you're
And if you like
absolutely right.
and you brought up something, if you like aviation history, there's I don't know how many exactly. There's certainly over 100 aviation museums around this country, and they're looking for all kinds of people, whether it's the curators or the people, the archivist or the director of the. I mean, there's all kind of positions available in aviation museum industry.
Gosh,
Yep.
the opportunities are endless.
Yes,
It's no longer a man's industry.
Awesome. Well, Peggy, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story and everything you've done for not only the industry for women in aviation to make it more inclusive and inspiring. Your work has shown that when one woman opens a door, thousands more can step through it, and you're living proof that anyone can do it. Thank you so much for being on the Wonder Woman of Aviation podcast.
thank you for inviting me. It's been fun. Thank you.